Greetings everyone, this is Ahav Ever, and this is the third part video debunking missionaries. Okay, now as presented in the previous videos, there's a few steps that I usually go by in terms of dealing with missionaries. A lot of it deals with dealing with historical issues, as well as debunking them based on actual text. I've noticed that whenever I've run across missionaries, it's very seldom that they actually would want to get into an actual view of the text, as well as dealing with any kind of historical content concerning their point of view. And a lot of this is just simply, like I said before, to reduce the theological debate and get into what's established facts because it's a lot simpler. Now, this part of the video is directed towards a group of missionaries, specifically those of Dr. Michael Brown, Jews for Jesus, and also a guy named David Stern. A lot of these groups are the ones who specifically try to present a situation or a picture to make it seem as if there's them on one side, there's rabbis in the middle, and the rabbis are preventing the Jewish people from hearing about what the missionaries have to say. But what the missionaries don't tell anyone is the fact that rabbis are not some separate group outside of the people of Israel. Rabbis are within the people of Israel, or are simply individuals in the people of Israel. So, of course, this tactic that missionaries try to use is to make it seem as if the rabbis have somehow stolen control of the Jewish people and are basically it's them with their knowledge base and with the text that they use versus the Jewish people who don't seem to know anything and basically are kind of, I guess you could say, blind to the real issues that supposedly the missionaries have and the message that they have that really the Jewish people should hear, when in reality, rabbis are within the Jewish people and are part of the Jewish. And not only that, the missionaries themselves are the ones who are separate from the Jewish people, and I'll be showing why I say that in just a second. So going back to those original points that the missionaries tried to make with this issue, the main thing you have to look at is what's listed here. Is that one of the things they try to claim is that the rabbis are preventing the Jewish people from hearing about the true Messiah, which they believe, of course, is Jesus, which we know it's not. The rabbis, they claim, have also added to the Torah, and the rabbis are basically hiding information about Jesus that the Jewish people don't seem to know about because the only people who could supposedly know about it would be the rabbi. Now, the way that you deal with this point is you deal with it on the issue of what does Hashem say? What does the creator of all things say? And the issue is not about whether or not it's a rabbinical authority, which is what the missionaries try to bring up. It's about what is halakhic authority or what is Jewish law authority. Now, when you go to the Torah, which is presented here, in the book of Shemot, which in English usually is called Exodus, there's a particular statement that's made concerning the issue of when Moses is father-in-law noticed that Moses was like sitting alone in judgment, judging over things that the people of Israel were bringing to him, and he was sitting by himself and doing it from morning to evening. And his father-in-law basically tells him, like, look, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be bringing people behind, with you that can basically try to rule in areas where you don't have to rule and rule in, over smaller matters, and they bring just the bigger matters to you. So that's what's being presented here, right here. So what Moses' father-in-law tells him is the following. "ואתה תחזה מכל העם אנשי חיל, יראי Elohim." So basically tells him to find men amongst the people of Israel who are strong and basically fear Elohim, have respect for the creator of all things. Anshe hamet senevatza. So these are men who like follow the truth and don't like the idea of the wrong, of things that are incorrect. ושמת עליהם שרי אלפים, שרי מאות, שרי חמישים, שרי עשרות. So basically, these are people who will be established by Moshe Rabbeinu as being leaders over thousands, leaders of 100s, and leaders over like 50s and leaders over 10s. ושופטי את העם בכל עת, והיה כי הדבר הגדול יבואו אליך, וכל הדבר הקטן ישפטו הם. So basically, he's telling them that they will basically be judges over the people, and any matter that is like basically too small, kind of a small issue, they deal with it. And any issues that are big, they bring it to Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, the text that's in black tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu went about finding these men and that they were from all of the people of Israel. They weren't from one tribe. They weren't, for example, just the Levi'im, the Levites, and they weren't just the Kohanim. They were from all the people of Israel. And he established them as being leaders over thousands, leaders over 100s, leaders over 50s, and leaders over 10. And further, what follows in the last part in the red, وَشَفَطُوا את העם בכל עת, את הדבר הקשה יבואון על משה, וכל הדבר הקטן ישפטו הם. So basically, every matter that they judged upon, they basically judged it in a way to where if there was a situation that was too big for them, they brought it to Moshe Rabbeinu. If it was a situation that was small, they dealt with it themselves. So this is what basically is the issue. The fact that there is a halakhic authority that was established in the Torah and is found amongst all the people of Israel. And we'll deal with next of how that's supposed to look in practical matters too, beyond this text. Now, following this in Sefer Devarim, or in English which is called Deuteronomy, it says the following: that Shafatim v'shoturim titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha l'shivatecha v'shoftu et ha'am mishpat tzedek. So this basically translates into that the people of Israel are supposed to give themselves shoftim v'shoturim. So breaking down the terminology here, shoftim are judges, shoturim are types of officers or officials, people basically who are supposed to uphold the law. And it says to the people of Israel, Titen lecha b'chol sha'arecha. So the people of Israel are supposed to give themselves these shoftim and shoturim and all of their gates, which means all of their locations that they established or live. And it says basically that Washer Adonai Elohecha Natan Locho L'Shivotecha. So this is supposed to be amongst all the tribes and not just amongst one. And it says Rishoftu et Am Mishpat Sedek. So these people were supposed to be judges, dealing with what's correct and what's the issue of chasing after. In some cases, people translate it as righteousness, but Sedek basically means correctness. The important point being that the people of Israel established these roles for themselves. Further in Sefer Devarim, or as people know as Deuteronomy, the roles and the responsibilities of these individuals are explained in more detail as well as their character. And we're basically told here, "Havu lachem anashim hachamim unavonim v'yodaim l'shevatachem v'asimam v'roshechem." Translated, this is supposed to be men who are wise, who are intelligent, and who know things, and they're supposed to be amongst the various tribes of Am Yisrael. And basically, the people of Israel are supposed to place them as leaders amongst themselves. Further to this, we're told that when Moshe Rabbeinu presented this to the Am Yisrael, they agreed to it and responded with Tova davar asher dibarta la'asod v'kach et roshei shivtachem anashim hachamim v'yeda'im v'aten etchem otam roshem alechem. ثوري آلافים, ثوري مئات وثوري خمسين وثوري عشرات وشترين وشفتخم. So translating this, we're told that Moshe Rabbeinu started out by taking these individuals, people, men who were like wise, men of understanding, and basically made them leaders amongst the people of Israel, leaders over thousands, leaders over 100s, leaders over 50s, and leaders over 10, and that they were basically like types of officers of the tribes of Israel. And we're told that they were supposed to listen and basically deal with judicial cases between different individuals to determine what was right between them and different individuals amongst the people of Israel. Now, again, this is the establishment of what's called halakhic authority or legal authority dealing with the justice of the people of Israel. Now, in reality, some missionaries somewhere may try to argue that that was just back then. That was during the time of Moses, so the time of Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar, before Am Yisrael arrived in Israel. But when we look in the Tanakh, the rest of the Tanakh, we see in Sefer Yehoshua, "V'chol yemei hazakanim asher ha'yirichu yemim acharei Yehoshua." So we see that this process continued during the time of Yehoshua ben Nun, who was the student of Moshe Rabbeinu. And it isn't something that just stopped and ceased after the people of Israel came into the land of Israel, before they came into the land of Israel. It continued during his time and further. And we're told that this was the time when the people saw different things that Hashem had done for them. Further to this point, we're told in Melachim Aleph, which is Kings, First Kings, and we're told in that section, "V'yo'etz hamelech Rachavam et hazakanim asher hayu amidim ad panei Shlomo Haviv." So we're told that the king of that time, Rachavam, had consulted with the zakanim, or the elders of his time, who had also been standing during the time of his father Shlomo HaMelech. So again, we see this process existed. We see it continued throughout the various parts of the Tanakh, and this is a process that didn't end at a certain point. It continued, and we're told that basically the Zakanim were also the Shoftim and the Shoturim of the previous generations, as well as during the time of the Tanakh. And also, we're told in Divrei Hayamim Bet, which is I guess you could say Chronicles 2, the second part of Chronicles. ويعمد شفتים בארץ בכל ערי יהודה ובצורות לעיר ועיר ויאמר אל השופטים ראו מה אתם עושים כי לא לאדם תשפטו כי לאדוני ועמכם לדבר משפט. So here we're talking about the issue of Yehoshaphat, who was basically ruling from Jerusalem, and it says that basically he established the Shoftim in the land of Israel through all the cities of Yehuda or Judah, and he was basically telling the Shoftim of his time, the judges, that they were supposed to be dealing with Mishpat, and even though the Mishpat is from Hashem, it's in their hands to deal with it. So this then leads us to another important point that is brought up in Divrei HaYamim Bet again, and it says, "V'gam b'Yerushalayim Amid Yehoshaphat min haleviim u'hakohanim u'meroshei ha'avot l'Yisrael lemishpat Adonai u'loriv u'yoshevu Yerushalayim." So basically, here we're told that Yehoshaphat basically established the Levim, the Kohanim, and the leaders of the people of Israel, of the various tribes, you could say, to deal with the Mishpat of Hashem, to deal with the judgments in terms of the judicial system. Ko ta'asun bi'yirat Adonai, be'emunah u'levov shalem. V'chol uriv asher yavo alechem me'achechem, u'yoshevim ba'arehem, ben dam ladam, min Torah lemitzvah, Lahokim Mishpatim. So basically, we're told here that these individuals were not just from the Levim and the Kohanim, but they were also from the leaders amongst Israel, and that they were supposed to judge amongst all of the people of Israel, amongst their brothers, in dealing with issues of Torah and mitzvah, or mitzvah, or mitzvah, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and that basically they were supposed to be dealing with all types of matters. And this brings up an important matter that is mentioned in this text, and that's when it mentions that these judges are supposed to be dealing with issues of bin Torah mitzvah, lehokim and mishpatim. Why the distinction between Torah, mitzvah, lehokim, and mishpatim? And this is something that the missionaries don't really have an answer for because they don't have anything that passes on to explain what that means to them. So I'll explain that exactly what it means right now. So this then takes us into the issue of what exactly was the purpose of having these shoftim and shoturim, these basically leaders amongst Israel who were supposed to be dealing with judgment. And the reason is because of the fact that there is what's called Torah Sheba'al Peh. And often you get into debates with missionaries about what Torah Sheba'al Peh is. They'll try to get into this issue that everything that was in the written Torah is just the written Torah, and that the rabbis just made it the Torah Sheba'al Peh. But let's deal with what the definition of it is, and this is something they normally don't deal with. So according to the Mishnah Torah written by Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, he explains the information in the following way, which is on this slide here. כל מצווה שניתנו למשה בסיני, הפירושן ניתנו, שנאמר ותנה לכו את הלוחות האבן והתורה והמצווה. She explains here that from all of the mitzvot, all of the commands in the Torah that Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, he also gave an explanation of how to actually perform them. And he quotes the section of the Torah in Shemot, which is also known as Exodus, where it says, "V'tana l'cho et luchot ha'even ha'torah v'hamitzvah." So in this explanation, which is given, Hashem said that to Moshe Rabbeinu, I've given you two things, the Torah and the mitzvah. So Rambam explains that the Torah zo Torah bechtav. So that means that this is the written Torah. V'hamitzvah ze pirusho. So the mitzvah that's mentioned in that particular text is the explanation of the Torah. So the Rambam, also Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, goes on to explain, "V'tziwanu la'asot haTorah al pi hamitzvot, v'hamitzvot zo hi hanikra Torah Sheba'al Peh." So basically, he says that the people of Israel were commanded to do the Torah according to the mitzvah, which is the command, the explanation, the pirush, and the mitzvah zod hanikra Torah Sheba'al Peh. So basically, this mitzvah that's mentioned here is the Torah Sheba'al Peh, which is the explanation of how to actually, in practicality, perform the mitzvot. And he further goes on to explain that basically this mitzvah, or this Torah Sheba'al Peh, was given to Yehoshua ben Nun, which is people in English would say Joshua, the student of Moshe Rabbeinu, as well as the Zakanim, the elders of Israel, the leaders of the people of Israel. It was also explained to the Kohanim, which were the priests, and also to the Levim. Now, there are people who want to challenge this and say, well, no, it was just the written Torah and there's nothing else. But the written Torah, for example, doesn't explain how to do a lot of things that are mentioned in it. Some of them are just words where it says to do this, but it never explains what that thing is, what it looks like, or how to actually perform it in a practical purpose. A few examples are these pictures that are on the left of this slide. The written Torah mentions to build a Mishkan, but doesn't explain exactly how to define some of the things mentioned in it. It mentions using different types of species for Sukkot, but doesn't explain what they look like, what they are, how to describe them, and what's valid and what's not valid. It mentions to do tzitziot on the four corners of a garment, but it doesn't explain what a tzitziot is, what it looks like. It mentions to use techelet in the tzitziot, but doesn't explain what color that actually is and how to visibly know what it is. The written Torah mentions totafot, but doesn't explain what a totafot is, which basically gets into the idea that there isn't any real reason to actually go out and write the entire written Torah out in a way to where it's like, dozens of volumes long in order to explain how to actually perform something. where instead there is basically almost like the shorthand version, which is the written Torah, and then further the explanation of how to perform it was given orally so that the people of Israel would transmit it. And every time you read the actual lines in the Torah, the written Torah, you would know, okay, I know how to perform that based upon a transmission of information that was received from father to son, from student to teacher, from teacher to student, and further and further. Now, the Rambam further explains this idea in more detail in his commentary on the Mishnah, where he basically says concerning the issue that when the Torah was given, again repeats the idea that there was an oral explanation of each mitzvah, so that basically whenever Hashem said, okay, you will make a sukkah, when you make tzitziot, there was an explanation of Moshe Rabbeinu after that of what it is and what the parameters of it is. And this is something the Rambam explains that what happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu would receive a particular mitzvah from Hashem. He would receive the explanation of it, and then he would go and meet with his brother Aharon, who was the head priest at the time, or the Kohen Gadol at the time, and he would explain it to Aharon in full detail, the mitzvah, and also the explanation that he got from Hashem. From there, Aaron would come and sit right next to him, and then basically Aaron's sons would get the explanation, the actual mitzvah, and then the explanation of the mitzvah, and then they would sit around Moshe Rabbeinu and also Aaron, and then from there you would have a situation where basically the Levim and also different leaders amongst Am Yisrael, the Zekanim, would get the mitzvah and then the explanation of it, and it would continue further and further until various people had gotten both the mitzvah and explanation of how to perform it. And this is one of the reasons that when you go to the most ancient Jewish communities, they know how to perform a mitzvah based on the written Torah, as well as an oral explanation of it, which is given to them and which has been passed down no matter what community it's from. And no one community has just the complete story without other communities having it also. So going further into this detail that the Rambam brings up, he gives an example of it. And he basically says, okay, well, one of the commands, the mitzvot that Hashem gave was for Sukkot. He basically saying that you will sit and do Sukkot for 7 days. So then basically that was the basic mitzvah. So after that, basically Hashem gave Moshe Rabbeinu an explanation of what a sukkah is, what the word even means, and what the explanation of a sukkah is. So you have two pictures on the side here of people either building a sukkah or a modern day sukkah. Basically, explanation also gave like how tall a sukkah needs to be, the minimum height for it, what kind of materials are used for it, the roofing for it, how it's supposed to be performed, as well as basically under what circumstances a sukkah is required and for who it's required to do it, and what actually are you supposed to do in a sukkah. So these are the complete explanations that were given, where the written Torah doesn't go into full detail. And again, it doesn't have to go into full detail because it was being given to a group of people who were going to be taking the actual text itself as the baseline for the whole culture and society and the history. And then from there, they would be practically performing what's written there based upon an oral tradition, which also gives the idea that it also helps prevent someone from coming along and saying, well, I'm the right people that this is talking about, not someone else. When you look at those groups and say, okay, well, where's your oral tradition about how to perform these things that aren't clear in the Hebrew text itself? So getting into the timeline issue, in the previous video, we dealt with the timeline for the missionaries and what they have in their understanding, their text, and for their belief system. So here's what the timeline is for the Torah, for the transmission that was received from the heart of Sinai or Mount Sinai to the present day. The list of names in Hebrew, which I'm only giving in Hebrew, are the list of names that go from Moshe Rabbeinu until the time of Rav Ashi, which is around the time that the Talmud, the information in the Talmud. So basically what you have is a continuous unbroken chain of transmission, which is recorded in Pirkei Avot, as well as the Rambam records it in the Mishnah Torah, which basically goes from Moshe Rabbeinu to the time of Rav Ashi, and is the unbroken chain of transmission, and this is how we get to the modern era. Because from Rav Ashi in the Talmudic text, the legal authority is from those group of people who transmitted it to the rabbis that go on until today, to the modern era. So in order to perform a test of this, of the information I've presented here, let's do a test for the missionary. Let's say that you have a missionary who's like going on and on about how there was no written Torah. I'm sorry, there was no oral Torah. And basically there's only the written Torah and nothing else, and that anyone who mentions that there's an oral Torah is adding to it. Well, here's a good example. Let's look in Shemot Yud Het, Yud Gimel through Tav Zan. So basically in English this would be Exodus 18, 13 to about like 16. So in this particular part of the text, we have a situation where it's mentioned that Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law sees that he is sitting in judgment of the people from like morning till night, and is asking him like, what's going on here? What are you doing? So in translation, basically when Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law is asking him like, what is this thing's going on here? Moshe Rabbeinu tells his father-in-law that basically the people come to me and they ask about things from Hashem, and I basically judge between them, then like person and his like neighbor, his friend, if you will, and I explain to them the hokeh, the laws of Hashem, of the Creator, and Torah Tov and his Torah. Now here's the interesting thing here that a lot of missionaries don't get into. Okay, you have Moshe Rabbeinu sitting here telling his father-in-law something that had already been happening, that he had been judging people and basically, like giving deans between them. But the written Torah never explains what judgments he was making. It doesn't ever tell us like what things he had judged on, because whatever he had judged on, of course, would have been law at that point. The people who had been judged in these matters would have had to have gone and done what he told them because Hashem is telling them what to do. So this is a very important point, because if the written Torah is supposed to be all there is and there's nothing else, but yet an event happened here, an historical event, that Moshe Rabbeinu made some judgments that obviously had to have been followed if they were like legal, the way he describes that he was judging people, judging between different parties. Obviously, the written Torah would have had to say, okay, well, he did it in these situations and these were the rulings, and this is what's required to go here from here on. Okay, so to basically close out this particular video, going back to the original points I made, that there's no real reason to debate theology with a missionary because they just don't have the historical information for you to even get too deep into. There's no reason to debate topics unless you have source material, which I've shown throughout this video that, here's the source material, here's what it says, and I've been able to read it to you in Hebrew. Translation is unacceptable, and that's why I presented all this information with the original Hebrew, giving explanations of it. And there's no partial acceptance of sources. A missionary comes along and wants to say, well, I accept this, but I don't accept that. Well, based on what? So that's the end of this video. There'll be another part of the video coming out soon. Thank you.